you. First of all, my name is Renee Brickman, and I am the board president of the Metanoia Project. And I appreciate and I'm grateful that I'm here today. We are a very grassroots, small organization, and so not a lot of people know about us, but as I'm talking to many of you, some of you have already either donated a meal or donated in some other way, so we appreciate that. So I'm here really to talk about kind of how Metanoia started and look at some of the services that we provide, and also talk a little bit about the clientele, many of our guests, and where they're coming from and some of their experiences. So I gave a handout there, and that has some contact information of some of the ways that you can help. It's on the last slide, and I will go over the different ways that you can donate and how that process works. So. First of all, I'll tell you a little bit about me. Right now, currently, I work at the Westside Catholic Center. I'm a family engagement program coordinator, and so I work with some of the children and families that are in our shelter, Mariah, which is right across the street, and also low-income families that have gone through some of our programs. And I help to create programs that help with educating families, so whether that's parenting skills or education skills that parents can help with their children as they're going through school. And so I just recently started that position this month. I just finished my first month. But prior to that, this past year, I was a client services coordinator where I worked with people who were either low income or who were out on the street and helping them with housing applications, Medicare and Medicaid applications, food stamps, and any type of services that we're able to provide, any type of resources. So, and prior to that, I was a teacher, a high school teacher. My background is in teaching. I was a high school teacher for 12 years at St. Joseph Academy. I was teaching theology, and prior to that, I was a grade school teacher living on the West Coast, but I actually am originally from Cleveland, so. And then, do we just, is it just the enter? Okay. Okay, so just a little history and about Metanoia and how it began. So you can see here that every night there are anywhere between 200 and 230 people sleeping outside or in doorways or in abandoned buildings on the streets. And back in 2007, the 2nd District Police in Cleveland got together with other community organizations and other outreach programs to talk about the number of people sleeping outside in the winter months and how can we get them to come in and get some shelter and a meal. And so a lot of these people that come to us are shelter resistant, and basically they're shelter resistant, meaning that they resist going into the typical shelter. We have 2 shelters, 2 main shelters that anybody can go to on any day, any evening. We have the men's shelter, it's 2100 Lakeside, and then we also have Norma Her, which is on the east side, for women. You can go into those shelters if you find yourself homeless, and there's a shelter system that takes place, and so they have to go through what's called a coordinated intake, and that's a whole process of questions that they have to go through. And many people who suffer from addiction or mental illness, they go through these intakes, and it brings up a lot of trauma for them when they're asking questions that they have to kind of go back into either how they became homeless, and it's too structured for them. They can't handle it, and so they decide instead with rules and policies and procedures that they'd rather be outside. When I used to teach students about homelessness, people used to say, or there might have been a stereotype of, well, there are a lot of people who choose to be homeless. And so I always say yes and no. So yes, they are at some level. They are saying that they'd rather be outside than be in the shelter system. And sometimes they feel even in the shelter system, because they are overcrowded, that they are unsafe, or it's just too much for them to handle, especially people that have severe mental illness, who may not have their medication stabilized. This can be very overwhelming for them. And many of our guests have experienced deep trauma in their lives. So with these different organizations and with the collaboration with the police, Metanoia opened its doors in 2007, and they opened their doors at St. Malachy Church on Detroit and 25th. And that was a great location, and we were serving between the years of 2007 to anywhere between 2014-15, I believe. We were serving anywhere between 50 and 60 people a night. And so it was people that were coming into the shelter, outside, and then other people who, again, just if they were over at 2100 or they were at the women's shelter and it was overcrowded, they would come and stay at St. Malachy. What happened about 4 years ago was St. Malachy was operating. It was a great place for everybody, and fire marshals came in, and St. Malachy was not up to code, and so we had to change our locations into satellite facilities. So and then with the inception of COVID, we are now at 2 sites with 15 people per site. So we definitely have grown, and we're able to staff those sites as well. So when I moved back to Cleveland in 2009, and this is how I became involved with Metanoia, I was finishing my master's degree in theology, and my thesis was on looking at the homeless, or those that were considered other in the Bible. And so I did my first part of my thesis on how people in the Bible and how Jesus treated people, and how we as a community in society should treat people who are considered other. So I did that, and I also wrote on Old Testament scripture too, that I incorporated those stories as well. Then the second part of it, when I moved back here, somebody actually referred me to the Metanoia Project. And at that time, they were at St. Malachy with 50 people. They started a new program called The Courage to Change. And it was an 8-week program that people could come to, and there were 3 classes. And one was a recovery program, a 12-step program. One was life skills and job skills, and the other one was the spirituality class. And so I began teaching the spirituality class for 8 weeks. And during that project, during my thesis, I took anecdotal records and I looked at how the program in general helped people to progress in their situation that they were at, and then more concretely looking at how spirituality and what we were talking in those classes and how that progressed within 8 weeks. And so that was part of my how I got involved with the Metanoia Project. Okay. So right now we're operating at 2 sites during the winter months. We start mid-November through mid-April. Our first night will be November 15th, and then we end April 15th. So we are at 2 sites. Each site offers 15 people a meal and a cot to sleep on. And our 2 sites are Franklin Circle Church and Bethany Presbyterian. So I have those listed on the handout, and I'll talk a little bit at the end about some ways that you all can contribute. So we're a low barrier shelter, and I explained a little bit about the coordinated intake process that someone, when they go into a shelter, they go into our shelter system here in Cleveland, they have to go through the coordinated intake, and all of their information gets put into an HMIS system, which is, again, a lot of information that is required from people, and many people, again, many of our guests refuse to go through that. One of the things that we struggle with, though, because we do need funding, is that a lot of county funding rely on organizations to put those guests into this HMIS system. And when we do need funding, we go back and forth a lot on the board about, do we really want to do we want to put that up as a barrier when people are coming in at 9, 10 o'clock at night in the snow? It's like 0 degrees outside, and we're going to have them sit down and go through this elongated questionnaire so that they can come in. And so we're working really closely with the woman who is part of the system, and we're hoping that if new people do come in and we don't know them, and that they're not in the HMIS system, that we can just give like a small half-sheet paper that is just about demographics. And most of them, if they have been out on the street for a while, depending on their length of homelessness, they're probably already in the system, but we don't want to make it where they feel that we are being intrusive, and that we're putting conditions on them being able to stay at our shelter. So that's one of the challenges that we deal with. So we do have more men than women that come into our shelters. I would say that we probably have about, on average nightly, about 2 women, and the rest are men at each one of the shelters. So that's pretty, I guess that's pretty par for the course. And then most of our guests have dealt with trauma and in their lives. And so, again, I explained a little bit about mental health disorders, addiction. Many of them have been incarcerated. And especially the men's shelter, that is, a lot of men are coming right out of incarceration, and they go to the men's shelter. And that can be pretty rough for some people who feel that that's just too overwhelming for them. And so again, they really appreciate having these smaller shelters. They're much more manageable, and it's just much more peaceful for them as well. And especially somebody who has mental disorders. And I see this a lot even at the Westside Catholic Center when people are sitting in our facility. They can stay there from 9 to 3 and watch TV and participate in some of our programs. And when there's somebody that has a mental disorder and it gets loud in there, or there's some type of conflict, it gets really overwhelming where they start acting out. And it can be quite disruptive at times. And so for some people it's just easier, and it's better for them to be in more in a kind of a smaller atmosphere as well, with not a lot of activity going around.
Renee?
Yes?
Is there a large number of veterans
that come to the Westside Catholic Center? No. So the veterans, there are a couple places that they can stay. The Volunteers of America, it's an organization that helps formerly incarcerated people, and they actually have a shelter for them and for veterans, for homeless vets. And so they do a lot of their services through them, but there are many, many resources out there for homeless vets. I actually I'm a landlord to a homeless vet, and it was through the Volunteers of America that he came to me. So yeah, so it's and they actually, with that's one of the first things, especially when I'm working at the Westside Catholic Center in the past, where if a vet comes in, we call the VA or the VOA, and they can hook them up and link them with many, many services. So you're welcome. Okay, so here are some of our programs and services. So we do meals and shelter. We do dinner at night around 7 o'clock, and we have some people also provide bagged lunches, and they give them out in the morning as they leave at 8 in the morning. And it's just something, if they have a snack or they don't know if they can get to one of the facilities or one of the organizations to get lunch, at least it's something that we're giving them. So we provide clothing, socks, and hygiene products, but this is all by donation too. So if we do get clothing from church groups or from other organizations, then we give it to them. If we get the hygiene products or socks, then we give that to them. So that's something that we don't actually pay for in our budget, but many, many people who bring or want to donate, they offer those. We also have a housing specialist, or we will this season, and we work very closely with the Northeast Ohio Coalition for the Homeless. They also provide, they're going to hire a housing specialist for us. And so what this person will do is they will come in the evenings, and they will fill out housing applications for them, and whether that's a CMHA application, which takes a long time to to process and then to be able to be eligible for housing. That's a long time. But many of our guests who have experienced chronic homelessness for anywhere between up to 365 days, and that can be within the last 3 years. So, and that they can prove that, like this explained to us where they have gone, and they're called permanent supportive housing applications, and those they can get into a little bit more quickly than like a CMHA application. So this housing specialist will come in the evenings if people are willing to provide that information, and that they're willing to do that. We do have guests that I've known for about 12 years and who are outside, and they continue to live outside. And this can be a touchy subject when you're talking to somebody and you say, oh, would you like to fill out a housing application? And one gentleman will just say no, he doesn't want to do that, and he's outside in tent cities or in bus stations. And so that's, and many people won't. Many of our guests, that's a very difficult thing for them to do, is to go and fill something like that out. And I'll talk a little bit more about why that is. We also have doctors on the streets, and these are doctors, volunteer doctors, that come in and they take people's blood pressures. They can administer any type of aspirin or any type of low-dose medication, like over the counter if they needed it. They don't prescribe anything, but they can offer if somebody's gotten like Tylenol, or if there's like cough medicine, if there's something for like a sore throat, but they can't prescribe anything. So and just some routine checkups for people too. So they come in about once a week. So we also have, within our programs, we have referrals for mental health. So if somebody comes to us and they say, I need to get a doctor, I need to, I haven't been taking my medication, and I need to get some mental health services. Well, we can definitely call places. At that time of the night we can't, but we can definitely refer them, give them phone numbers of places that they can call to set up some of those appointments. We've also had people who have been formerly addicted to drugs and alcohol come in and talk about their recovery. We also work very closely with a White Butterfly Foundation, and they come in and offer and explain to some of our guests how to apply for services. But again, that is also a waiting list sometimes, depending on the number of referrals that they get. So for workforce development, and where I am employed at the Westside Catholic Center, we actually have a whole program devoted to workforce development. So when we have guests that come to us and say, I'm looking for a job, I can't find a job, we refer them. And at the Westside Catholic Center, there is an 8-week workforce development program where they are in class from 9 to 12. They learn interviewing skills, resume building. They also look at, proper hygiene, proper wearing, how to dress for an interview. They have a whole curriculum. So they're kind of like a feeder for us when we have clients, and that has happened several times that we've actually seen some people from Metanoia going into the workforce development program, graduating, and then getting jobs. And so some people finish that program and some people don't, but it's just it's very it's nice to see that we can give to, that we have other referral places that people can go to. So we also we're starting this year, this is an ID collaborative, and what that is, and we do this at the Westside Catholic Center too, and this is very, very helpful for people who are applying to housing. So what that is that we will offer vouchers for birth certificates and IDs. If you don't have a birth certificate and ID, it's very difficult to fill out a housing application because they ask for those along with a social security card or a number. And if you don't have a social security card, you can't get the birth certificate. And so a lot of times they don't. And then if you don't have a birth certificate or an ID, you can't get the Social Security card. So there's so many barriers to people like going through this process. And so what we do is, especially at the Westside Catholic Center, we will tell them you need to go to your medical provider and get a face sheet that has all of your demographics on it, and it will have your full Social Security number on that. Once they do that, then they can come to us. The ID collaborative that Metanoia will be putting in place is right there at our site, and that will be hooked up on the computer, and we will put their information in, and we will give them a voucher. And then they can go to, for both the ID and the birth certificate. So they'll go downtown to get the birth certificate, and then they'll have to go to the BMV as well to get their ID. So that's just a really wonderful thing that we can do. Otherwise, we're referring them to other organizations. Even at the Westside Catholic Center, these are volunteers that come in to do these ID collaboratives, and they're only about 3 days a week, and we get a high volume of those, of those requests. So we will probably October, it's going to be October 3rd tomorrow, we probably are already filled with those appointments probably to the 3rd or 4th week in October, and we don't put out the next month's calendar until the end of October. So there's St. Paul's over on Franklin as well that does that 3 or 4 times a week. If we're booked at Westside Catholic Center, we'll say we'll just go over to St. Paul's and you can have it there because they do it right on the spot. And we'll be able to do that for our clients, our guests as well. So we also have, we started a shower bus last year. An organization comes twice a month for people to take showers, and they can sign up to do that as well. There are other organizations, I know at the Westside Catholic Center we offer showers too, and there's a couple other places that offer showers. And then we also provide bus tickets, and sometimes the bus tickets for our guests are really, we try to do those during the holidays or maybe once a month, and those are by donation. But the bus tickets that Metanoia that we're allotted funds for are really for people who, if they get picked up by either the police or they come to our door to get a cot for the evening and we don't have one, we give them a bus ticket if we can get them over to another site, or even if we can get them, there's a couple other churches that are opened that do the same thing that we do. We'll call over there so that they can get transportation over there in the evening. And I'm not sure how I feel about that, because sometimes when people come in, it's 9, 10 o'clock at night and it's cold, and I always think, well, they're going to probably have to walk about 20 minutes to get to a bus stop and then go over there. So sometimes, but that's what we do. We try to make sure that if somebody does come to our door, we may even be able to, like if we have a bagged lunch and they ask for food, and there are bagged lunches, we're able to give them something so that they don't go away empty-handed. So that's just really, those are some of the newer things that we're doing so that we can provide people with the resources, because we do, when we first start the program, it'll start catching on, and by December we will have people out the door, outside before the staff even gets there, a long line to get in, so that can get tricky too. So these are some ways that you all can help if you desire. So preparing and serving a meal, and I have Morgan is our volunteer coordinator, and she also she's also our fund development and writes grants for us as well. And her email is on the handout there. And so we usually serve at 7 o'clock at night. They come in at 6 and they get settled, and the meals are delivered at 7 o'clock. And you and your group or whoever you're with are invited to come in and serve the meal if you feel comfortable. If not, that's fine too. Some of the meals that we provide are, because the question was asked, and so I thought I'd give you some examples. So I've done tacos, which is it's very easy because all you have to do is ground the meat, and everything else, like the lettuce and cheese and salsa, sour cream, that's all in containers, and that's easy to do and to serve. And then a dessert could be as simple as like cookies, however you want to do it. You can buy them, you can make them, however you want to do that. We do get a lot of people that do pasta. I understand I do pasta too, but sometimes because the person that's bringing it one night might not know what the person that's going to bring it what they're going to bring the following night. So sometimes it could be pasta 2 nights in a row. And there are some people that, and if they've gone to a lot of the organizations that serve lunches, they may also have gotten pasta. So sometimes just being a little creative can help, but I understand that because it's cost effective and it goes a long way. So chili is a nice one. Soups are good. A lot of times, some people, if it's a group or an organization that's going to do it with it, and you have funds to do this, sometimes they'll go to a restaurant and just have that. We've had people do like fried chicken and mashed potatoes, and just putting them in the pans and bringing them too. So there's it's sometimes people in groups will just do a bagged lunch if that's okay as well. We try to get rid of all of our food. We might keep it for the next day. We don't have a lot of space for leftovers, so we try to keep to making sure that we're serving about 15 servings. So that's a wonderful way to help out. And Morgan would be the person to email, and she just sent our new calendar, and she can send that to you to have you look at some of those dates. Making a monetary donation, and that could be, just sending it to our post office box, which is in Lakewood. And we ask, right now we're actually in our, we're asking a lot of funding for specific donors, like regular donors that have donated to us, and then also foundation donors. And those are the ones that we really need a lot of, the foundations is where we're really trying to get the monies in, because our staffing is the main cost of the organization. So we have two employees from 6 to 1 in the morning, and 2 employees from 1 to 8, and 6 to 1 in the evening, 6 in the evening to 1 in the morning, and then 2 employees are scheduled 1 a.m. to 8 a.m. and that's every day for every day, and then it's every day, and so that's a big, the employee staff and payroll is our biggest expense. So, and then also donating again products, hygiene products, socks, clothing. The other thing that I know that we ask a lot of schools for during this time is donating products for our sites, and those would be like garbage bags and paper towels, a lot of our paper products. Especially like toilet paper and cleaning products and bleach, are really, really important to keep just kind of the daily and the nightly cleanliness of a lot of, of the different sites. It can be a big expense, and it helps for us as just kind of a small organization not to have to run to the store all the time. But those are just a lot of different ways that you can all help. Does anybody have any questions? Go ahead.
I just wanted to mention, you might have seen in the newsletter some information about Metanoia and what we're hoping to do. And I did just get an updated donation list from Morgan, and so I'm going to be putting that in. Well, we're going to have a number of groups come in this month, as Jim mentioned. And one of the things that we want to do, and this is Aaliyah's great idea, is on the months of the year.
I don't know if that's, I'm sorry, I didn't know to say that.
On the months of the year that there are 5 weeks, we're going to have a multi-generational activity with MOJ's support, and this October 30th, we will be making up some hygiene bags. So in the I didn't get this done in time for the newsletter, but in the bulletin insert and then on the email that's sent out, we'll be listing the supplies for the hygiene kits, as well as some requests from the couple other organizations that we'll be working with and hearing from this month. So there will be more information. You're welcome. I'm happy, Sandy and I are happy to be the contact for Metanoia. If you'd rather contact Morgan directly, that's fine, but our plan this year is to supply 2 meals each month to each to each site. Last year we just did 2 meals, and you all were so generous, we easily did 4 meals a month. So once Bethany opened up, so just keep your eyes open, and if you have any specific questions, we'll be glad to answer.
Thank you. No, that's great. I didn't mention, and again, if you were to contact Morgan, she would be more specific. So, and also like a dessert would be something like as simple as cookies, and some people bring like the bottles of water because it's easy. However, I find it easy and again, more cost effective. They do like soda, like a Sprite or something, and you can get that. That goes a little bit longer. And they do like that because they don't get that in a lot of even the places that they go to, the organizations that they go for lunch and dinner. They don't provide soda, so they appreciate that as well. I did say that that there are close to 200 to 230 people outside in Cleveland every night, and our goal is at Metanoia, our long-term goal is to continue to get sites and have sites have organizations, churches to provide us a site so that we can get more people off of the street in the evening, because we do have a long list of people that want to come in. Yes?
Are there specific articles of clothing that you need more than others?
So, thank you. Yes, so one of the things that we get a lot of requests for are like hoodies in the wintertime. I know I've picked up some like at Walgreens, like you can get them for like $5 or $10, if that might be like I've asked schools before to do like either, whether it's they do like hoodies for the homeless type of thing, and they bring in like men's hoodies, larges and extra large, because that's what most of the men will take. And they do like a Christmas collection and donate them that way too. Yes, socks are always good. Pants and things of that nature are fine. But if you're doing something like in bulk, they really appreciate the hoodies. Those are something that because they can layer them up, especially in the winter time. So, thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Yeah, how many tent cities are there in Cleveland now, and did things get really difficult when they shut down that large one that was on the banks of the Cuyahoga?
Yes, yes, it did. That were down by the riverbed there. Yes. So there are. I don't know exactly how many communities there are. I do know that there are several down near the Flats area. Well, they cleaned that out. About 5-6 years ago, there were several down there because we used to do outreach. When I taught at St. Joe's, we did an outreach group that went and served them. They're pretty much out, and there were probably, I know there are a couple that are still down there, but they're under bridges where you have to kind of climb up like a cement and be in there, and I know that one is still existing. There's one over off of West 65th in Denison, I believe, and that one's become really big. And I believe that there are a few on the east side too, that there are a few on the east side of like near East Side in Cleveland. There are a few over there. So I would say about 5 maybe that there are still existing right now.
Are there any ones that are like specifically protected so that you don't have certain cities trying to chase them out in the future?
And that's interesting so that you asked that. So with the Northeast Ohio Coalition for the Homeless, they have outreach workers that go out to those tent cities daily, and they all have a route. The outreach workers in that organization all have a route, so they go to the specific ones. And they're trying to, I don't know the answer to that, but I know that they are trying to, at this point, they're working very closely with the police and with other organizations, and they're saying that if they see people in the communities, if you see somebody outside and they're homeless or they're making kind of a racket or chaos, don't call the police. Call the Northeast Ohio Coalition for the Homeless, because they know them personally. Those outreach workers know the people that are staying in these tent cities. So there isn't like this, oh, we want to get them out and kind of pushing them out. So that they're, at this point, that's what they're working on. I don't know if any community developers are looking to push them out to put something in there, because I know that with the development of all those high-rises downtown, like by the riverbed, that pushed them out. I don't necessarily know if it was that they were making, that they were causing conflict or anything, because many of them don't want to cause conflict because they don't want to be seen. They just kind of want to be to themselves. So
a lot of it just seems to be city policy. They don't want to see them there, so they tried to move them, but it's like, well, where are they going to go?
Where are they going to go? Right, exactly. And so that's what our goal is as our organization is, let's try to, we eventually would like to have our own building where we can have some type of like a building or a storefront or something for our own office and for people to be able to stay there, so that we're not trying to get sites every year, because we're always asking. And Franklin Circle Church has been wonderful since the beginning that we've gone there. They let us do that, and the rent is free, which is great. And they are very happy that we're there and that we're part of their church. So yes.
I just want to say that part of what we can do also is write to your Cuyahoga County representatives, council representatives, and if you live in Cleveland, they still don't have a good plan for what to do in the winter months. So you can do the advocacy.
That's great.
Contacting your representatives.
Thank you. And even with the new mayor, we are working to try to, he's very open to looking at policy as well. We have some people on our board who work at NEOC, who they do a lot of advocacy for the homeless too, so we're working on that as well. But thank you for the suggestion. Anyone else? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yes. With the increase of rent rates through the roof these days, especially in the suburbs now, where it just seems unattainable, has that caused a direct increase of people you're seeing in need?
So I not necessarily like on the tent cities and people outside, but yes. So one of the things that my prior position at the Westside Catholic Center, and with COVID, because there was that policy that you don't need to pay your rent when COVID first started, that they were giving kind of like a grace period for 6 months. Well, many people who are low income took that as, well, I don't have to pay my rent. So when the landlords came back and said, now this is due, we were filling out applications with the Cleveland Housing Network, and they were helping as long as they could prove that it was due to COVID. So whether it was their business shut down, especially like the service industry, like restaurants, and so, or they actually got COVID, they're a single parent. And so there were numerous clients coming in asking for that, and that was one of the things that I helped them to do. Many people too at that time, and throughout these last year and a half, many evictions have been happening, and I think Cleveland just got the law passed, or the incentive that we're looking at more closely, the pay to stay. So just because somebody doesn't pay, they're 1 day late with their rent, you can't, that's the law. Landlords right now have the right to file for an eviction if they're only 1 day late. But that policy is changing right now, so that, and I was telling somebody the one day, I said, this could be very simple. I understand if they're not paying rent for 2-3 months. And I have talked to landlords when I was helping people, and they would say, yeah, she hasn't paid the rent though in like 3 months. And I'm like, okay, well, what if we can put her on a plan? And they will say, okay, we can do that, but I will still file for the eviction. They have the right to do that. I'm working with a group trying to talk to people about looking at ways that, okay, if you have to pay your rent, like what I do as a landlord is I pay off the mortgage, but I know that the rent is going to be deposited into the account anywhere between the 1st and the 3rd. But I also, my mortgage company doesn't take it out until the 15th. So it gives them a grace period of 2 weeks if they can't pay it. So that to me, I feel like there could be just some forgiveness there. And I think that we could, because evictions, that's another thing that we also deal with. And we have the Legal Aid Society come in to talk to people once a month about evictions. So that helps. That's at the Westside Catholic Center, sorry, not at Metanoia. But yeah, so they are very, we are trying to work for these resources for people, and there are plenty of resources available. It's just the access that many of our people have challenges to accessing those resources.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I really appreciate it, and thank you for all of your efforts as well. So it's nice to hear that so many of you know what the Metanoia Project is, and so we look forward to seeing you all. Thank you again.